So here it is. The embargo is up for Dragon Age the Veilguard, and the results are pretty good. So in this video, I'm going to talk a bit about the Metacritic and OpenCritic scores that we're seeing, a smattering of the videos I've gotten to watch so far of people reviewing Dragon Age the Veilguard, and some other stuff that I kind of want to rant about a little bit. So let's jump into it. Okay, so let's kick it off with the OpenCritic and Metacritic scores. They're currently sitting at 83 and 84 respectively. There was a short time where they, at least the OpenCritic score was up around 89. It's dropped a little bit since then. This is extremely good. My whole idea on this was that if it was scoring, the absolute minimum, if it was in like the mid high 70s, that would be like an okay result. If it scored in like the 80s, basically anywhere, that was kind of what I expected, and that was gonna be really good. If it somehow creeped up into the 90s, that was just gonna blow my mind and my expectations. So it settling into this mid-low 80s is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. That's extremely good in most ways. I've already seen a little bit of chirping about how it's dropped from almost 90 down to almost 80. That's okay. Something to consider, because how numbers work. This game, it's getting a couple 10s, a couple 9s. It's mostly getting like 8s and 8.5s. So when it was over 8.5, if it got another 8.5, that's going to bring down its average, right? And considering it's getting a lot of 8s, which I think is a pretty solid score, and from the reviews I've listened to and read, it seems to fit pretty well with the things that people like and the things that people don't like about it. Every time it gets an 8 out of 10, it's going to drop a little bit. Now, at this point on OpenCritic and Metacritic, they've both dropped down, or they both have enough reviews now that unless there's like a surge of really low scores or really high scores, it's not really going to move much more anymore. So, this 83, 84 range is really good. I'm sure everyone would have preferred it get up into at least the higher 80s. And, well, let's get into that. The interesting thing I found when I see this, I always, maybe because I hate myself a little bit, go to the really negative, to the lowest scores, and review those reviews. And what's interesting about them is that their scores are often kind of don't make sense if you read the review. Like if you look at, I looked on, I believe it was OpenCritic, or no, it was Metacritic and the PC, because it's a couple points lower. And one of the lowest reviews was a 6 out of 10. And it was from a site I've never heard of, and from a person I've never heard of who, it must be like a fake name they're using, because it's a really famous person. I don't know. I don't think that person's writing video game reviews. But what was frustrating about reading the review is that they basically just say, well, I'm giving it a 6 out of 10 because it's not the game I wanted Dragon Age to be. But the game they actually released is great. And so that's like one of the frustrating things you'll find. Like, obviously reviews are subjective. I don't expect that everyone has to give everything a 10 out of 10. That's not what I'm getting at. But there are little things, especially when you make it like kind of obvious, you kind of talk about it, where I don't think it's fair to take your own expectations and review a game based on that. Now, on the other hand, as just a gamer, if you're just going to post a hot take on Twitter or talk to your friends or whatever, I don't mind if you do that, because you're not trying to make any kind of objective score or rating of the game. You're just chatting about it. You just have a hot take, right? You have an opinion. But when you're a reviewer, whether you're an influencer posting YouTube reviews or you're a journalist posting reviews on a website or whatever, I feel like there's some expectation that while you may let your own expectations and hopes color your take on a game, that there's at least some level of objectivity when you do a review, as much as you can, right? And when I see a review that's straight up just saying, oh, this game is great, like the game that they made is good, a lot of the things in it, it's very much along the idea of, they made the game they intended to make, and that game that they intended to make is good, but it doesn't meet my expectations. Like that's tough. And then to give it a relatively low score is tough in that way as well. Regardless, you're going to have that, and that's okay. Not everyone has to give it great scores. I think, and if you've seen the reaction on Twitter and other social media, at least all the devs I follow or associate with in some way seem extremely happy with what's coming out. There's also the thing of I've really started to like really less and less kind of care about these like Metacritic and OpenCritic scores. As I've started to realize that I'm way more likely to find a couple reviewers or journalists or whatever who I kind of vibe with, who I have similar interests with, and then kind of put a lot more weight into what they think rather than looking for the whole industry to have some, generalized opinion on a game and let that color what I think. So, when it comes to that, some of the folks I've seen talking about it are even higher on it than what we're seeing from the Metacritic and OpenCritic scores. So that makes me happy. Going back to what I've talked about before, I'm excited about Dragon Age. My excitement for years was that I wanted it to come out so they can move to Mass Effect. And that's still how I feel, to be fair. What's changed is I am genuinely excited to play Dragon Age at this point. I don't think it's going to turn me into a Dragon Age hyper fan. I suspect I'm going to play through it once or twice. It's probably going to be it for me, even though I may dabble if there's nothing else for me to do. But my interest in playing it is to play something from BioWare in 2024, is to look at decisions they've made and try to determine, like, is this the direction that BioWare wants to go with their games? Is that going to be something we see in the next Mass Effect? Or did they do this thing because that was, the best thing they could do with the time and resources they had? When a couple of the reviews I listened to were from people who were part of the community council on this game. And while they don't give details, they talk a lot about how Dragon Age the Veilguard and Rook and various things that the main character about the game changed a lot over the last few years during development. And myself having a lot of experience with that, with games like The Division and other games I've watched develop from an early time, especially a game that got canceled this year called The Division Heartland. I know what they mean when they say, the Veilguard changed a lot during development. Where I watched games like change genres while they were being developed, that I've seen. And so when they say that, and those things tend to happen because of a shortage of time and resources and manpower and all of that, right? So I'm excited to play Dragon Age now from a analytical point of view, to think like, oh, did they make this decision because this is the way they want to make their games from now on? Or did they make that decision because they just ran out of time and this game had to come out eventually? When we talk about game development, I think people often think of it as very like black and white. And what I don't think people realize, or at least what my take is game development is much, I would argue it's much closer to something like an artist making a music album or an artist painting a painting. In theory, if you gave one of those artists unlimited time and resources to work on one album or one painting, they would never finish, because it's never truly done. It's just done enough, where someone puts their foot down and says, okay, you've done enough here. Let's put that out and let's do the next thing. Let's do something else. And that's how games are. And I think if more people looked at them in that perspective, maybe they'd be more understanding of why games are the way they are. I digress. I'm excited for this. I think this looks really good. I think the reviews are great. I will say some reviews, like there was one I listened to from a fairly notable person who said that they don't recommend people play the Veilguard and that it's worse than Anthem. Opinions are subjective. In the video, the person I see how they're trying to justify that opinion. It seems like it definitely borders, in my opinion, especially after reading and watching reviews from other people who varied from being very positive to more neutral. That's subjective, of course. Like whether or not you think one game is better than another is subjective. But Anthem, while it did have some cool things about it, is like arguably one of the biggest disappointments and one of the most like one of the worst games ever made in the sense of, you know, especially at launch. And so to say something like that either means, in my opinion, that all of these people who are giving this game, even like a 7 out of 10, but like 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10, and even a few 10s, you're saying that all of those people are wrong, in my opinion. That's what you're saying. And being like, no, this game is worse than arguably the worst game this studio has ever made. One of the biggest mistakes they ever made, at least in some ways. It makes it hard for me to take that opinion seriously because it comes off as just being contrarian and clickbaity. And worst case scenario, it comes off to me as you're potentially trying to bait attention and clicks from the worst folks on the internet. And that's all the grifters and stuff like that who have already gotten started on this, have already started moaning and groaning about this getting good scores, go figure, everything's woke and DEI or whatever. They're going to say what they're going to say. We knew that. They'll move on to the next game soon enough and they'll forget Dragon Age exists. Well, the rest of us, especially BioWare fans, Dragon Age fans, Mass Effect fans, and people who are new or going to come in new to this series and studio and all that are just going to be enjoying this game. And that's what I'm excited about. I'm excited for people like me who are going to be new to the franchise, people who aren't new to it, and may not be getting everything from this game that they were hoping for, or that was in the game before, but can still appreciate what it is and how it carries on that legacy. I think it's pretty good stuff. So I will be playing it on stream on Thursday. After I play for at least a few hours, I'll do a video of doing like a first impressions, and then probably sometime next week or the week after, when I have time, when I finally beat the game the first time, I'll do a more traditional review. So be on the lookout for all of those things. Also keep in mind that next week I have the day off for N7 Day for multiple reasons. But when they start dropping the blogs and whatever they end up doing next week for Mass Effect's N7 Day, I will be around for that. So be sure to follow this YouTube channel, my Twitch, my social media, and all of that. If you want to keep up with everything I'm doing there, links for all of that stuff is in the description of this video. Dragon Age did it. They landed the plane. Seems like it went pretty well. I think that BioWare is probably in pretty good shape. Hopefully this means that the next Mass Effect is definitely happening, and I can't wait to talk a whole bunch more about that when the time is right. If you like this video, please hit that like button. If you have your own thoughts about anything that we talked about in this, leave them down in the comments below. If you're a weird idiot, I'm gonna just hide you from the channel like I have many others already. If you want more BioWare, Dragon Age, Mass Effect, or just gaming news in general, please subscribe to the channel. If you want to support or check out all of my other content, hit those links down in the description. That is all I have for this one. So until next time.